Here's an idea. A denial of service attack is a weapon. So if you're not Elite Hacksaw, there's a chance you don't know what a denial of service or distributed denial of service attack is. Essentially, a DOS or DDoS attack is a way to knock a website offline. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but at their core, they're all pretty similar. A denial of service attack crams the server's tubes all cholesterol-like full of meaningless traffic. The servers can't handle it, they freak out, get tired, and then shut down. These attacks can be perpetrated by one person or thousands of people because, you know, the more the merrier. And depending upon how long the attack lasts, sites can be down for minutes, days, sometimes even weeks. Denial of service attacks have been used by Anonymous on Scientology's website, on the Westboro Baptist Church's website, on the Tunisian government's network, by security companies on the Pirate Bay, and most recently by a huge network of people on Mt. Gox, the Bitcoin market website, and Spam House, a not-for-profit anti-spam organization. And on tons of other websites by tons of other groups. A denial of service attack is one of the easier ways to just a website that you and your 1,000 pals aren't fans of. Now, if you look at the way the press and blogs talk about denial of service attacks, you might notice something. There's a certain discourse surrounding these matters. We use the word attack. We talk about operations and takedowns. We use the word weapon to describe software which causes server malfunctions. In her book, We Are Anonymous, Parmi Olsen compares DOS methods to missiles and handguns. She talks about different DOS techniques' relative destructive power. The most popular piece of DOSing software is called the Low Orbit Ion Cannon. Does all of this suggest that DOSing is a weapon? Now, before we get much further, let's do some bud snipping and agree with everyone who is currently typing a comment about how anything can be a weapon. A spoon, Furby, ear of corn, cotton ball, and miniature bust of Elvis could all be weapons if one was so inclined to use them as such. So we are gonna take a stricter definition. We are gonna say a weapon is something which is purpose-built to cause violence. But who, boy, what counts as violence? I mean, causing physical harm is violent, but what about destroying property? And what if that property is online? Theater director Anne Bogart says that in art, violence is the interruption of inertia, the removal of possibility, and most importantly, of choice. And I think this is as true in life as it is in art. Objects which are specifically built to interrupt the status quo and to remove choice for someone or anyone, those are weapons. That bust of Elvis then doesn't count unless it was made by a particularly unhinged individual. Cars then are not weapons, but guns, some knives, and most DOS software are. A DOS attack interrupts the inertia of a functioning site. It removes the choice of the administrator to have their stuff online. It is, by our definition, violence. So in that sense, yes, the software which causes a denial of service attack is a weapon. But as digital anthropologist Biella Coleman points out, most DDoS attacks tend to be, quote, a political stunt. The sites that are more vulnerable to DDoS attacks tend not to be actual important infrastructure, just symbols of that infrastructure. Source in the description. When FBI.gov has been taken down, it doesn't mean that highly classified intelligence documents have been compromised, it just means that FBI.gov is down, and some people wanted FBI.gov down. In these cases, a DDoS attack is almost like firing a starter pistol in the mall. It's not damaging, but it is threatening, and forces us to confront some of the stuff that could happen. And while Loic hasn't done massive damage yet, might it eventually? As the legions of zombie computers which fuel denial of service attacks grows, so too does their power. I mean, we recently saw what a bunch of admittedly very alarmist blogs called the biggest DOS attack ever. But there's an important balance to strike here, and you have to wonder if calling DOS a weapon overinflates its power, even in the face of its actual inflation. Putting DOS software in a lineup with guns, putting the snowball next to the howitzer, and saying that they are of a kind could distort our ideas about either. Not to mention greatly diminish the terrible experience of actual physical violence. No one person has ever died from a DOS attack. So in light of this, calling a DOS attack violent or even an attack seems a little ridiculous. But the way that we talk about this whole arrangement shows us how we think about our online spaces. They are prized and important and worthy of defense, and when someone threatens them, when someone removes our choice to have them, it feels like an attack. It feels violent. We treat, or at the very least we talk about our internet infrastructure like it was our territory. We think of it as ours, and maybe even sovereign, and when someone shoots an infinite number of internet packets at it, it feels like someone is shooting an infinite number of something which is much more destructive. Like bullets. And it's very easy to get caught up in this whole, oh my god, what if the power grid, and oh my god, what if the hospitals, and more importantly, what if the YouTube servers get attacked? point being that taking this stuff very seriously seems like the right thing to do to many people. So if we call DOS a weapon, then that means the people using it are perpetrating a violent act. Whether that violent act is just or unjust, that's a whole other can of internet worms. As the internet leaks and leaks and leaks into everything, including lawmaking, it becomes very important how we talk about these things and what we call them. Like, participating in a DOS attack is illegal, and it will get you maximum 2 to 10 years in prison, 3 years probation, and a $250,000 fine. Does that penalty eventually inflate if we start treating these softwares and actions as something more nefarious than we already do? At the same time, though, we don't want to conflate digital violence and physical violence. Comparing a drone strike to downed servers is some cray apples and oranges action. But maybe, as more actually important stuff gets hooked up to the internet and botnets continue to grow, political agendas intensify, and internet tomfoolery escalates, there will be a time at which the effects of the low-orbit ion cannon will resemble something closer to a low-orbit actual cannon? What do you guys think? Is the software which lets you participate in a denial-of-service attack a weapon? Let us know in the comments, and joining the Idea Channel botnet is very easy. Subscribe. Hashtag comments about last week's episode. First and most importantly, good golly, we won 2 Webby Awards. So thank you to you guys for voting and supporting us. Once we have our big Webby spring, I'll hold it right here for everybody to see and celebrate over. So thank you so much. Nancy Murphy points out that it is frustrating when someone you follow on Instagram writes just a wall of Instagram tags, which, yeah, there's a choice you have to make, right? About sort of bothering your followers or reaching out to people who don't follow you yet. GPO. Huh? Ethan Quinn says that sometimes a tag will add a helpful level of understanding to a photo, but Micro Dawson points out that sometimes adding the meaning will take away meaning that a viewer could bring to a tag. So in that sense, yeah, sometimes there's two different ways a hashtag can be deployed. Relatedly, Sam Nealon casts this as a kind of the difference between art and design, and that design is supposed to evoke a specific feeling, whereas art is something where you can bring an interpretation to it, which is I think it's very insightful. To Symphonic 76, that was, I think, kind of the joke. Whether or not you could call it a joke because of how maybe sad his relationship with the pigeon was, is, I guess, another thing entirely. There have also been a couple comments over the last couple videos about how we overanalyze trivial things. And I know that I've said this before, but I want to just make it really clear that to us, nothing ever made by a person is trivial. It's just all incredibly interesting. Even Instagram hashtags. Those were made by people, and that's cool. Boop. I have no idea how to solve these. Where's Dan Brown when you need him? To the 1H Duck, I love Momus. I actually once saw him kick a box around a gallery for 45 minutes. That is a true story. To Tobias Legendium, about one full French press. This week's video was brought to you by the awesome work of these industrious people, and the tweet of the week comes from Nikki Rhoda, who points us towards an all things considered story about the connection between guns and arms manufacturers.